Hi guys, this is Warren Bingham and this is video 4 of the IBD Medical video series, so it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm doing something a little bit unconventional today, and that is I'm about to head out on this lake behind me to do some windfalling, which is a crazy sport that requires a board, a wing and a lot of wind. And it's become part of my diabetes story, and I've got to tell you, there are benefits to being diagnosed with diabetes, and that is that you can turn it into an excuse to get into some new sports and maybe spend a bit of money. Anyway, on behalf of IBD Medical, this is a journey of how have I educated myself. And in this particular video, I'll share with you some of my insights of my experiences around education, experience, and some of the things that I maybe be able to share with you that might help give you a bit of motivation, a bit of self-belief, and if nothing else, a bit of comparison to maybe what you've experienced and what I've experienced. So the very first question in this series, in this particular episode, is how did I educate myself when I was diagnosed? First thing I thought was a smart thing to do was to actually ask a lot of friends. And as I alluded to, I think in my very first video, the challenge I had is that I came across the fact that everyone had an expert opinion on diets. And that just became incredibly overwhelming. So I realized that, and I very soon got to a point that I'll stop asking people for their advice. After a good several months of lots of conversations and Googling and Professor Wikipedia, I contacted Diabetes New South Wales ACT, and I've got to say they provided me a wealth of information on things that can really help me in understanding how to live with my type 2 diabetes. They also introduced me to a program which was Diabetes and Me, and I've got to say, I highly recommend it. I believe it's been put up on their website as available to the general public, and it's a multi-module training program with lots of really helpful videos that shares invaluable insights on everything from diet and lifestyle and sleep, psychological matters, and a whole bunch of stuff. And you can spend hours on there just learning. But it was a great resource whenever I found myself often just asking a question, what do I do about this? And can I eat this sort of food? And in this particular case, that certainly proved to be a really invaluable resource. I will warn you, if you do a lot of online searching, you're going to very much likely end up in a position of information overload. So just be wary of that, and like anything else, if you take too much, it can often put yourself in a situation that's just not, that can be confusing, and you don't need to put yourself in that. So if you find yourself getting a little bit overwhelmed and unsure and a bit confused, give yourself a break, and just take a breath, and perhaps you might find a happier place, a happier space at some point in time. Ultimately, in the end, I also went back to my GP and I asked my GP for some more information around diet. My biggest challenge that I found living with diabetes was trying to understand food. I had no idea food was so technical, so complex, and a whole bunch of stuff. So the best thing for me to do was to go and get some help. When I went back to my GP asked me, well, what did I want? And I said, I need to speak to an expert, someone who can help me with diet, someone who can help me understand how to read labels on food packages, what to eat when, and so on. And what is a balanced diet? I mean, ultimately, what are the sorts of foods and how much can I have? So he gave me a referral to a dietitian who was invaluable. So certainly in that context, go back to your GP if you need some more help. There's a plethora of expertise that's available for you to get access to. The next question asks, did I have any negative experiences that affected my confidence? Well, the most negative experience I had was getting the damn diagnosis. I went in with a soccer injury and I came out with a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. That was not great, but it is what it is. I really didn't have many bad experiences with people around me, and when I shared this story, the most profound experience I can remember is when I shared with someone that I've been diagnosed with type 2. Her response was, "Oh no, I'm so sorry." It was almost as if the next statement was going to be, how many days do I have to live? So Anyway, fortunately for me, I was beyond that. I was well above and beyond having a sense of self-confidence issues. I had already come to the conclusion and the acceptance of the diagnosis, and I was well and truly on my path of looking after myself. So just be aware that when you do share this, sometimes people's reactions are not what they are. They, you know, particularly if they're your friends, they're going to be very sympathetic and be supportive, but they're not necessarily going to know how to react when you tell them this. So the next question is, how did I transition from negative feelings towards diabetes to normalizing it and feeling empowered so that it didn't define my life around diabetes? Now, this is a really interesting question. For me, the biggest thing that it came down to my ability to move beyond the fear, the anger, the rejection, and really embracing this was accepting and understanding that the only person in my life who can make this happen is me. So when I realized that I could speak to 1 million people, I can ask for 1,000 opinions, and I can justify to a whole bunch of people, including myself, why I shouldn't do this and why I shouldn't do that. It was when I accepted that I have type 2 diabetes, I'm living with type 2 diabetes, and it doesn't have to define me. It's just what it is. I also found a lot of motivation when I realized that this can actually help me live a healthier life. I can be happier, healthier, more active. And for the first time in my life, I've been forced to think about what I eat, drink, how I sleep, and what I do, and how I spend my time. So it can't be bad, and it's not bad, and I'm really grateful. It was the kick, the jolt, the midlife crisis, and I'm really, in many ways, I'm actually really quite pleased that it actually occurred. I also realized that when I accepted this and came to this conclusion, that I set myself a challenge, if you will, that if I had a list of things that was frustrating me, I would pick one of those things a day and focus on that thing and learn about it, research it, speak about it, ask questions to people around me, and tackle that one thing instead of trying to do everything all at once. There's so much to do, and let's face it, you're diagnosed with a chronic disease that you're going to live with for the rest of your life. If not, you're going to have to live with managing your diet and your health so that it doesn't come back. On that basis, you've got the rest of your life to worry about this. You've got the rest of your life, more importantly, to take the time to invest in yourself. So give yourself a break things down so that they're not one huge problem. There's lots of small problems or small challenges. And with that, take it one day at a time, and I'm sure it'll make it a lot easier for yourself. The next question is, how did I find confidence in feeling comfortable with diabetes with my friends and testing my blood glucose measurements in public? Well, when speaking to people, it really did help me overcome my confidence, and I found that when I was speaking publicly about it, sharing my fears, asking questions around a whole bunch of things, diet, sugar, alcohol, the works, that it was actually a really good way for me to build confidence. So on that basis, I'd certainly suggest get comfortable talking about it, and if you can do that, it'll help you a long way in being comfortable in yourself in being a diabetic. I then realised that also, I don't like needles, I don't like sharp things, but actually after your first few finger pricks, you do get used to it, and there are technologies that allow you to even avoid finger pricks totally. That said, I don't mind doing it. I'm doing my blood glucose measurements now every morning, fasting. As soon as I wake up, it's the first thing that I do. So I don't have a concern or a need to do it any other time of the day or night. I do know that others do have to do it, and it is what it is. It's your health, it's your life, and you shouldn't be ashamed. If you need to take your blood glucose measurement in public, do it and be proud, because at least you're one looking after your health and thinking about it in all that time. And funnily enough, I had no choice to do this in public in some situations. I was on a SBS News report on diabetes as an ambassador for Diabetes Australia, and they asked me to do it on national TV. So I guess I've done my blood glucose measurements in public and on a larger scale. So really, it doesn't faze me at all anymore. I wouldn't suggest you try and do that, but hey, just get comfortable with it for sure. And the final question was, what advice would I give to someone to help you towards the journey of confidence in yourself? Firstly, it's got to be about believing in yourself. You're no less a human being just because you've been diagnosed with type 2. So, give yourself a break. Give yourself the time to get used to the diagnosis and understanding and to learn about what it is you can do. Because everything you do towards looking after your health is something that perhaps you weren't doing prior and has to pay positive dividends to you in the short and the long term. Remind yourself that you are looking after your health, that you're taking control of your health. And that's a big step. Most people blame other people. Some people blame fast food chains for the ill health that they are suffering. That's a bit crazy, really, but they do. And finally, my piece of advice is life is 10% of what happens to you, 90% of how you react to it. So my reaction to my diagnosis has been gone through the fear, the rejection, the denial, the anger. Why did I get this? I don't deserve this. To now acceptance, and I've embraced it. And I gotta say, I'm healthier than I have been for the last 30 or 40 years. I'm doing more stuff than I have ever done before. I'm loving sports and being outdoors and doing all sorts of things like that. So for me, diabetes has been a gift. It's been something that I didn't want, I didn't know I was going to get, but actually as a result of getting it, I'm doing much better in my health, and I've got a much better balance of lifestyle than I ever had before. So I'm really glad, and I'm very thankful to my GP for going that extra mile instead of just giving me a referral for an X-ray, but told me I should get my bloods done. So with that, I hope that you've enjoyed this little clip. It's gone over for 11 minutes, I'm sorry, a little bit long. But keep taking care of your health. Next week is going to be next week and the next video will be more about my lifestyle today. What does it look like? What am I doing? So we'll get into more of the detail about the day-to-day stuff, and hopefully that'll give you some interesting pointers. In the meantime, the sun is out, as you can see, the wind is up. I'm going to get out there on that scary looking board and foil over there, and I'm going to join these guys out there on the lake for a good old week. So till next week, take care of yourself, be well, and keep looking after your health. That's the most important thing you have in your life. Great to be in your audience. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.